The full moon rose in the sky over the sleepy town of Blackwood, nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains. It was a night like any other, at least that's what the locals thought, until they began to hear howling. A chill ran down Sarah Thompson's spine as she locked herself in her log cabin. The howls grew closer, filling the air with an imminent sense of danger. He had heard the stories, the legends about the night wolf that stalked Blackwood during the nights of the full moon, but he had never believed them until now. It was a dark and windy night. And the creaking of the tree branches and the howling of the wind seemed to echo the howls in the distance. Sarah closed the windows and curtains, feeling vulnerable in her lonely cabin in the woods. He looked for his cell phone, but the signal was non-existent in these remote mountains. As Sarah tried to calm down, she heard stealthy footsteps. Her heart was pounding and she held onto a kitchen knife as if it were her only hope. The footsteps got closer and with a sigh of relief, Sarah saw the figure of her brother, John, through the window. She opened the door quickly and ushered him in. "Have you heard those howls, Sarah?" John asked, panting from the effort of his run to the cabin. "Yes, they're terrifying." "What's going on?" Sarah responded, with tears in her eyes. And he looked out, nervous. "They say he is the nocturnal wolf, the werewolf who prowls these mountains on full moon nights. Mom used to tell us stories about him to scare us as children, but I never imagined that." The howls became louder and closer. Both brothers looked at each other in fear, feeling that something terrible was approaching. They decided to barricade themselves in the cabin and wait until morning brought daylight. As the night progressed, the howling became They mixed with the sound of breaking branches and heavy footsteps, seeing that something terrible was approaching.
Terrible se acercaba.
They decided to barricade themselves in the cabin and wait until morning brought daylight.
Era la luz del día.
As the night wore on, howls mingled with the sound of breaking branches and heavy footsteps. The seconds felt like hours, and fear took hold. Every shadow that passed through the window made them jump. Finally, at dawn, the howling ceased, and calm reigned in Blackwood once more. Sarah and John ventured outside cautiously, fearing what they might find. What they saw took their breath away. The town was in ruins. The houses were destroyed, the doors torn off their hinges, and there were bloodstains everywhere. The howls had been more than just terrifying sounds, they were the prelude to a massacre. Sarah and John searched the wreckage for survivors, but found no one else. The community of Blackwood had been decimated by the night wolf. The full moon had unleashed its murderous fury. They decided to flee the town and seek help in the nearest city. As they walked along the winding path that would take them out of the mountains, they heard one last howl in the distance. They stopped and looked back, fearing what they would see. A gigantic figure emerged from the trees, with dark fur and glowing blood-red eyes. It was the werewolf, the terror of Blackwood. He approached them with a hungry look in his eyes that revealed death. Sarah and John ran like they had never run before, with the night wolf chasing them at full speed. Every time they looked back, they saw his terrifying figure getting closer. Finally, after a desperate race, they reached the city and alerted the authorities about what had happened in Blackwood. But when they returned with help, the town had disappeared, as if it had never existed. The authorities did not know what to think. There was no evidence that Blackwood had existed in the first place. The brothers were questioned again and again, but no one believed them. The night wolf and his slaughter seemed to have been swallowed by the shadows of the night. Sarah and John, desperate for answers, returned to the mountains to search for clues. For days they explored the woods, but all they found was a deep feeling of unease that haunted them. They knew that the night wolf was still lurking, waiting somewhere in the shadows. One night, while exploring a remote area of the forest, they heard the howling again. They were the same howls that had terrified Blackwood. The brothers exchanged nervous glances, aware that they had fallen into the night wolf's trap again. Following the howls, they came to a thick grove of trees where the full moon filtered through the leaves. It was then that they saw him standing in the middle of the clearing, the night wolf in all his ferocity. The night wolf was an imposing and terrifying creature. His red eyes glowed with malevolent intelligence as he looked at the brothers. Sarah and John felt trapped, with no escape. But before the night wolf could attack, an old man with a long white beard emerged from the shadows. He wore a necklace of wolf teeth and held a staff carved with ancient runes. He was the guardian of the mountains, a protector of the land who had seen the suffering caused by the night wolf for generations. The old man began to recite an ancient incantation as the night wolf growled and backed away. The full moon began to fade, and the creature turned into a man, naked and wounded. He was a man trapped in the curse of the night wolf. The guardian of the mountains explained that the night wolf was actually an inhabitant of the town of Blackwood who had been cursed centuries ago for his thirst for power. Only during the nights of the full moon did he become the beast that terrorized the town. With the guardian's spell, the curse was broken and the man was free. He lamented the atrocities he had committed as the night wolf and promised to help rebuild the town he had destroyed. Sarah and John returned to town with the freed man, and eventually, the authorities began to believe his story. Blackwood was rebuilt, and the community flourished again, although the legend of the night wolf never completely faded. The lesson learned in the Appalachian Mountains was that sometimes evil can hide in the deepest shadows, but it can also be defeated by the courage and determination of those willing to face it. The night wolf became a warning of the dangers of greed and the thirst for power, a warning that would echo in the mountains for generations to come.